to answer any questions you might have. So make sure you send in questions so I have something to talk to rather than talking to myself. So that's always helpful. There's applications@melco.com is how you can email them. You can send them to Melco International's Facebook page. You can type them as comments on these past videos or on the previous week's video. And we will get as many answered as we can during the live. So give me a second to refresh my pages so I can see any comments that are going. And then I only received 2 questions for today. So on these past videos or on the previous one. There, no feedback. All right, so there's the Facebook comments. So let me get the ones on YouTube. And then again, I have to mute it. All right, great. So now I can toggle back and forth between Facebook and YouTube and answer any questions. All right, so like I said, I only received 2 questions. So if please type them in on, hi Christian, good morning Anita. So feel free to type them in so I have something to think about. All right, so 1, how do you do children and infant toddler hats? So what the question actually asked, what hoops, that sort of thing. So the smaller hoops, snow in Alaska. And Brian, good morning. There is no snow here in Florida. It is 90 something degrees and awfully hot still. Makes for painful running, but snow is pretty. All right, so children and infant and toddler hats. That is often done pre-construction. So there's no hat hoop as you would traditionally think of a hat hoop, right? So how you would do those is get the smallest round you can find, and basically you have to cram it in as, do your best to smash it as flat as you can and go. Like I said, a lot of them are actually done pre-construction. You can always sew patches and put them on. That's probably the easiest way, is just to make a patch and sew it on. But I would just do either a small round, one of the smaller round hoops, flatten it out the best you can, and hoop it and go from there. But there is no traditional hat hoop for the smaller sizes. Okay, so unfortunately there's not a good answer for that one, short of doing the embroidery and then sewing together a hat. The other question I had was over here. It was sent in on Facebook, so through the messenger. It says, I'm trying to do this, make this an applique, and I can't get rid of these center things. Oh, all right. So Brian actually just posted that he was able to do a 2T hat on the WACF. So if you're unfamiliar, the excuse me. The WACF is the wide angle cap frame. It's the one that comes with most of when you get a hat, not the one with the bar across it. That's called the CAF, conventional cap frame. It's the one with a thin wire that goes all the way around. So sounds like he was able to get it on there. Honestly, I've never tried it. So I've only ever done adult hats, so I can't speak from experience there, but looks like the 2T hat actually was able to get on the WACF. Awesome. Good job. So for doing this applique, the question was, I can't get rid of these center parts. I don't want fabric or color there. I want it to be empty. How do you do that? So let's go to DesignShop. Maybe. There we go. And yeah, Brian says doing it on the WACF wasn't easy. I can't imagine it was. That's a really large round, something like that. And the small hats are that big, so trying to make it stretch out and get it to where everything's out of the way, I can't imagine being easy. Okay, so I didn't know what font that was, but so the question is, I'm getting this, but I really want this. How do I do that? Okay, a lot of it has to do with how are you digitizing it. Okay, and whether you're doing it by hand or whether you're using vector art or things like that. So let's look at it first off. Let's say you traced it and you're tracing something, a line drawing, and you've got this, and to do an applique you can go here. So this is a level dependent feature. You can also do this with just doing it manually, but I'm going to start with this one just because it's easy. All right, so I've got my applique and I'm going to trace the shape. All right, so there is a much faster way to do this. I was just going to start with the basics, okay? And then I'll show you the faster way. So we trace our shape, and I'm just eyeballing it roughly because this is just for an example purpose. All right, so how you trace that: left clicks for those triangles, right clicks for the curve points. All right, hit enter to close the shape. And down here, below where my mouse is, you'll see it says input hole or hit enter to input entry point. Well, I actually want a hole, so I can't see it, but I'm going to go ahead and draw the hole. Now, if you don't draw the hole, that's when you're going to get left. That's a really ugly hole, but oh well. Sorry about that. All right, so I have no more holes, so I'm going to hit enter, and now I have an applique. And I can, of course, fix this nonsense by making it actually line up with my wireframe, or with the shape I have below it. Use control there. There, that's better. Okay, so that makes it where now I've got an applique piece that is just the fabric and then the borders around it. Now, if I did not do that hole and I just hit enter through it, what you would end up with is this right here. All right, so you'll end up with no hole in it. So if you have that, how do you add a hole? So you don't have to redo it. You just have to select your shape that you want to modify. You're going to come over here, and in this group of 4, those are kind of editing commands. The top left one right here is insert hole into selected object. All right, so I'm going to click insert hole, and then you're going to trace where you want that hole to go. Okay, hit enter to close it, and there you have it. So now let me move it off my closed shape so you can actually see it. Now we have an R with a hole in it. Okay, so it's just a matter of adding holes into them. All right, so you can either do that ahead of time by taking the shape and placing a hole in it. All right, so taking a vector that's already got the hole. So I did say there's a quicker way to do this. So select your shape. I'm going to take the one that already has the hole in it. And if I hold the shift key down, shift is add, control is replace. Okay, so I want to add an applique. I don't want to get rid of my vector. So I'm going to hold the shift key down, and then I'm going to click select applique input method. And there we have it. I have an applique done with a hole in one click, rather than having to do all that tracing that I did earlier. Same with the O. If I take the one that has the hole in it, again, hold the shift key for add, click on the applique. All right, so like I said, applique, that particular tool right there, is level dependent. So if you need to do this by hand, you have to think about how do you want the applique to be, right? So you need a placement stitch, and then you need a zigzag and a top coat or a top stitch of some sort. So I'm going to take my shape, the shift and control, so shift is add. I'm going to add a walk input. Okay, so now I have a walk in the shape of a C. So I'm going to just turn off the vector so you can see it. All right, so now I have a walk normal, which is just running stitches. So then I'm going to take that shape, duplicate it. All right, so just by right clicking and go to duplicate and change the color, just so I can now have a color change. And let's say I want that to be my zigzag this time. Okay, again, I don't need this walk stitch. I want to turn that into a zigzag. So shift is add, control is replace. So I'm going to replace my walk with a zigzag. So I'm going to hold the control key and click on the single line center. Okay, then it's just a matter of changing the stitch type and the width of how wide I want it. Okay, it's a personal preference, whatever you like to do. Okay, so now I have my placement, my tack down. Again, I'm going to duplicate that tack down. I'm just going to change the colors, change this back to a satin, and make it wider. So now I created it by hand. Okay, so with the O and the R, the same thing happens when you're creating it by hand, right? You're going to go just draw all the shapes. So if I take my R, I'm going to select the shape, hold my shift key to add, click on my walk input. Again, I'll turn off the vectors so you can see it. And it's just the same process again. I've got a walk, I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to change the color, hold the Control key to replace it with a single line. Change that to a tackle with a border of something thicker. 20 is kind of narrow. That's only 2 millimeters. So I'm going to go to 3 millimeters. And then I'm going to copy and paste that one, give it yet another color, and make it back to a satin stitch. Now tackle is, again, level dependent. So instead of using a tackle stitch, what could you do? So if you don't have that, well, instead of tackle, I could leave that as a satin and just change the density. So I'm going to have to go into properties for that. So I'm going to turn off the auto density, and I'm going to make the density 17. That gives me the same general effect as a zigzag, okay, without using the tackle. You notice it's slightly different from a true tackle stitch, but it'll still work and do the same functionality. All right, and then I got my satin stitch, and I want that wider. Okay, so that is creating it either by hand, which is what I just did there, or speed up your workflow by creating it using the Applique tool. It's all the same thing. Okay, you get the same result in the end. So now I have lots of letters all over the screen. All right, is there any way you could go over how to take a sweatshirt that's on Sam Meyer's website and move the design onto it so a proof can be shown? Let's see. Yeah, so let's see if I can find, is there any on YouTube? I don't see any questions. So question is, how do I do a mock-up? Let me go to Sam Meyer's webpage. I wonder if I can, am I logged in? Hang on, let me log in. Find a picture. Sorry, I guess I could browse in front of y'all so you can see where I'm going. Let's see. Sweatshirt? I know wherever you can download the pictures, you can get them. I don't know. Let's grab a shirt. Where do they put that stuff? It's been a while since I've done these. Product images, high res. So you can go get the high res images if you want. Or you can... Actually, I'm going to go do that. Yeah. What is this? Go away. No. Alright, so I don't want the back, I want the front. Download. Okay, so, let's delete all this stuff. Delete that. Not that I want this on that type of shirt, but that's alright. Where did I put that? I think it went under downloads. Yep. Nope. That is not where it went. Did it download? Sorry, I'm trying to download stuff real time. I don't have any of these saved. Open file. Alright, copy. I'm just going to copy and paste. Paste. I should probably scale down the design. Or, anyway, there we go. So, can put it straight into DesignShop. That is not the type of design for this, but that's all right. You get the idea. So then I can come over here and make it what I really want it to be. So instead of this green, I can use maybe a white. And then instead of the blue, maybe put a black or red border on them. Something else. Yeah, let's do that instead. All right, so anyway, you get the idea. So you can actually paste it straight in there, and now you would have a mock-up to show your client. Okay, and you probably don't need as high of a resolution one as I downloaded, but that gives you the idea. All right, so what other questions do you guys have? Like I said, that's all I had. Let me pop over. Oh, YouTube. I'm having a lot of issues with microfonts. When I try to use a t-shirt with thin fabric and 2 layers of cutaway, the letters never come out clean. So microfonts, the key to if you haven't watched the little video on that, let me show you where the resources are for it. So over here, melco-service.com, If you come over to FAQ and then search small lettering, I'll show you some really good resources for you. So right here where it says small lettering, all right, so there are techniques for when you digitize them to make sure it looks crisp. So making sure you're using appropriate underlay, that you've got decent densities, that you have enough pull compensation so it's not too small, those sorts of things. So there's a really good video out here on small lettering on how to do that. Okay. And like I said, it's 45 minutes long. It talks about it in detail. As far as the actual, so once you have a good file that has, you know, a good underlay, it's almost got a little bit too much pull compensation on it so that when it shrinks, it'll be a nice size. All of those kind of good practices, if you will, on your digitizing. Once you have that, then it's a matter of making sure you have the right materials. So using 2 cutaways, great. That's perfect. That's what I do. You can also use a smaller needle and smaller thread. It makes a big difference than taking a 40 weight thread and going down to a 60 weight thread. That's usually enough to take that from looking bulky or unlegible to something that's nice, crisp, and clean. Just going from down to the smaller needle size, going to a 60 weight thread, and then using a topper, right? So particularly when you're doing smaller stuff, the stitches are so close together that it's almost like it wants to bury into the fabric. So that's why the underlay is important, and then the topper is important because that helps hold all those stitches on top of the fabric and stops it from sinking into it. All right, and then of course slowing it down a little bit also helps. So I highly recommend reviewing that video on the digitizing. Scott did a fantastic job with that. So you can go through it all and see. All right, what other questions do we have? All right, popping back and forth on my other screen between YouTube and Facebook to see if there's any others. Okay, well, I don't see any. So if there's... Good morning. All right. Well, that's great. All right, well, again, my name is Samantha, and be sure to send in your questions. I tend to poll in the groups a day or two before. On YouTube on the small lettering, would you not recommend a center walk then? Yes, a center walk is good for small lettering, and often it's usually the only thing that can fit under there on micro fonts, because the narrower it gets, if you try to do a zigzag or anything like that, it's either going to stick out because it's passing the top stitching, or it's not going to be a zigzag anyway. It's just going to be a running stitch. So a center walk is a good idea. Sometimes it's even better to do it as a manual underlay where you digitize it yourself. That way you can control the needle penetrations and to make sure that you have a good coverage that will get covered by your top stitching. So yeah, center walk is often all that fits under tiny lettering. Okay. All right, so as I was saying, sending your questions. You can, like I said, send them to the Facebook page, Melco International, not to mine. I don't check mine. But Melco International's, or you can send them to applications@melco.com. Type them in on this week's video, and I'll review the questions for next week, see if anything got missed. But short of that, I guess it's a little bit short today, but have a fantastic weekend. And I will be back next Friday. See what questions we can talk to. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.